Chinese military exercises sparking alarm over waters off Australia's east coast. Beijing has warned of potential live-fire naval drills in the area, insisting they were safe but not confirming whether live ammunition was used.
中国人民解放军南部战区组织舰艇编队赴远海开展演训，演训活动始终保持安全、规范和专业的操作。 符合有关国际法和国际实践。
Commercial flights were warned to steer clear, forcing some airlines to divert flights over the waters between Australia and New Zealand. Canberra has raised its concerns with Beijing over the short notice it received. Roger Maynard reports from Sydney.
Although the exact details of this so-called live-fire exercise are still to be established, it does not bode well for relations between Australia and China. What we do know is that pilots of commercial airlines were warned to avoid airspace between Australia and New Zealand after it emerged that the Chinese Navy was holding military drills in international waters about 340 nautical miles southeast of Sydney. The first indication of the possibility of a live-fire exercise came when an Emirates aircraft flying from Sydney to Christchurch was apparently directly warned by the Chinese military to avoid the airspace. As a result, other airlines, including Qantas and Air New Zealand, were forced to divert their flight paths by air traffic controllers. Australia's Defence Minister, Richard Marles, said planes were literally flying across the Tasman Sea as China began its exercises. Australia's national broadcaster, the ABC, reported that the Chinese vessels were seen deploying a floating target, changing formation, and then resetting formation consistent with a live-fire event. However, it's understood that the Australian Navy, which was monitoring events, did not actually see the Chinese vessels firing on the target. The danger this incident posed to commercial aircraft is open to question. Australia's Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, would not be drawn on whether the matter concerned him.
Well, this is activity that has occurred in waters consistent with international law. The notification has occurred. There, according to Defence, there has been no imminent risk of danger to any Australian assets or New Zealand assets, and that's why this notification occurs.
Defence Minister Marles clarified the situation by confirming that China put out a notification that it was intending to engage in live fire in a broadcast that was picked up by commercial airlines. Although the Chinese vessels had ostensibly complied with international law, it was customary to give 12 to 24 hours notice, he explained. Australia's Shadow Defence Minister, Andrew Hastie, described the government's response as weak. The Chinese government has built a blue water navy to protect power into the Pacific region, and they are now using gunboat diplomacy to test US allies like Australia, he warned. Concern has been bubbling here all week about the presence of 3 Chinese vessels sailing down the east coast of Australia. They included a frigate, a cruiser and a replenishment vessel. This is an extremely rare spectacle and suggests that China is keen to test Australia's response to such a military presence relatively close to the mainland. It also comes after a near miss between a Chinese fighter plane and an Australian Poseidon maritime surveillance aircraft over the South China Sea last week. As a result, this latest incident will only serve to increase tensions between the two countries. Roger Maynard, CNA, Sydney.